It is time for another viewer match, and what I got for you today is a Platinum League Zerg vs Zerg, spawning in the northeast corner of Acolyte LE, playing with the red drones. We've got none other than Archvile, or Archvile, or Archville, or Archville. I think I'm gonna go with Archvile. Vil doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And his opponent, spawning in the bottom left corner, playing with the blue drones, he goes by the nickname of Busker. Now, of course, we are right here on Acolyte LE. I've noticed a lot of people in the lower leagues in particular, and Platinum League, I guess, is not really considered to be a lower league anymore, but regardless, I noticed a lot of people take their in-base expansions here instead as their very first base, whereas most of the professional gamers opt to go for the one that is right outside and a little bit closer to their opponent instead. We'll see what both of these players will opt for here in just a little bit, because I'm assuming that they will indeed go for a reasonably quick expansion. Indeed, yep, right here in this game as well, Archville, or Archvile, or you can really kind of choose which nickname you would like to go with right there. He's gonna pick up this in-base expansion as his very first as well. And it looks like, actually, judging by the movement here on the minimap, we see Busker do the exact same thing. It's quite interesting. Generally speaking, right, if you expand towards your opponent, it's gonna be a little bit risky, because of course your base is gonna be exposed. But on the other hand, you're gonna have a lot more creep spread to work with as well. And as a matter of fact, versus Terran and Protoss myself, I've actually been taking this one as my natural, this one right over here is my third, and then this one more often than not is my fourth base. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that is the correct order to go with, but generally speaking, this one, at least by Terran and Protoss, is quite easy to drop into, and it's a little tricky to defend if your army is going to be out here. Regardless, though, it doesn't really matter all too much in this particular game right here. Anyway, now, I have casted plenty of Zerg vs Zergs from viewers in the past, by the way. Before you post anything mean down below, I'll be the first to admit as well is that sometimes, you know, just a smidgen, sometimes just a little bit, these games can be a little bit cringy just because it's Zerg vs Zerg and Banelings are really good against Zerglings. Okay, I'm sure that many of you are aware of that. Zerglings are very weak against Banelings unless you micro them very well. So before you post anything really mean down below, let's just keep in mind that the people that are, you know, submitting these games are also probably going to be watching these videos, right? So, I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is don't be a jerk to other people. I mean, hey, that's pretty straightforward. Now, we do indeed see the double queens coming out from both of these players. 8 Zerglings right here by the player in the top right corner. Archville, Archvile. I think it's actually Archvile. This is like the foreigner coming out in me. Like, I literally look at that word and I see like 4 to 5 different pronunciations. I don't... There's probably one very obvious way to pronounce that. But anyway, doesn't really matter very much. Isn't that actually something from Doom? Maybe I'm saying something crazy right now, but I recognize that name somewhere. Anyhow, Archvile, apparently he's gonna go ahead and put the Zerglings here on the top of the ramp. Now, he is getting himself the Zergling speed. I'm assuming that this is going to be more than likely just used as a defensive measure here for the time being instead. He did indeed notice that Busker was sending a handful of Zerglings across the map, so the player in red is indeed producing more and more Zerglings here, as well as a Spine Crawler. So I would say that Busker has already done the damage right here just by simply forcing more and more units out of his opponent. But at the same time, while Archvile also decided to do a little bit of scouting, and he did pick up the information about that in-base expansion, he lost an Overlord for it too, which is a rather pricey cost. Busker pushed up that ramp, figured out that indeed there are a ton of Zerglings there waiting. Now, judging by this Spine Crawler, I'm going to make the assumption here that Archvile is not actually planning to get very aggressive here at all. He is indeed just simply going to go into that evolution chamber and even a second one here as well. So I don't think he's really going to be pushing just yet. But of course, Busker at this point in the game does not quite realize exactly what's going on, and he is going to be forced to make some defensive units here. And it looks like he will be opting to block the ramp right here, not only with a queen, but with a handful of roaches. And apparently I say that, and the queen immediately moves back. But he's going to block the ramp right here with a handful of units to make sure that the opponent cannot easily get in here. And then at the same time as well, rather, he's going to pick up the lair here too. So he will be able to start tacking up towards a more powerful unit composition here once this lair finishes up with, for example, the Gliar Reconstitution, or just simply more upgrades and different kinds of units as well. Both players actually playing awfully passive here, and both of them, I can't help but notice, they are both skipping out the Baneling's Nest. Now, the Baneling Nest, of course, it's one of the staples in Zerg vs Zerg for a good reason. I guess if you go for the quick in-base expo, you may be able to just simply hold on to the ramp. But say, for example, if Busker, you know, or rather if Archvile would recognize exactly what's going on here, he would look at this and realize that this is not an army composition that is going to push across the map here in the next like 4 to 5 minutes, you know, like it's probably gonna sit here for a little while longer. Now of course there's a chance that he will go for a timing attack now that the lair is done with the roach speed upgrade, but I highly doubt that he's gonna be able to push out right now, which would open up the opportunity for the player in red to just simply take another base and just start mining a ton more resources while building up the same kind of roaches here as well. Now he may make a bit of a push for it. No, I think this is just to snipe an overlord or two. Oh, gotta be careful. Ooh, look at that. He actually is not an overlord that is afraid in the face of danger. I mean, he quite literally saw his brother from another mother just die right there. I guess it would be a larva from another hatchery, although that doesn't have quite the ring to it. But all I'm trying to say, right, Zerg vs. Zerg is very much so a game of drones. And while both players are pushing, you know, quite a passive stance here in this game thus far, Busker actually now also going for the double evolution chamber, and now also starting up that Glio reconstitution, which is the roach speed upgrade. Like, both players are actually approaching this very, very passively. And I am more or less of the opinion that if you want to, like, improve in Zerg vs. Zerg, you're better off playing a more aggressive style instead. And I'm not saying, like, cheese every game. That seems to be what a lot of people hear when I say, oh yeah, you should really consider like playing more aggressive. You do not want to cheese every single game, but it is definitely worth poking the waters or, you know, checking out on the other side of the map what's going on. Right now, for example, the player in red is essentially blind. He does not know at all that these, well, he can see them just barely right now, so he may get a bit of a glimpse of it, but for the most part, he doesn't really recognize what's going on until he sees the units on the other side of the map. And if he were poking around with the Zerglings, realized that there was no third base up, he may have been able to put the dots, or connect the dots rather, and realize that something not quite right is happening in this game. It does look like another Overlord did just get sniped here by these Ravagers. They're going to try and do as much damage as they can here. And indeed, more and more vision will get denied now. But Busker, he does have a very menacing army, finishing up the Glio reconstitution, as well as that Burrow upgrade, actually. Interestingly enough, he could push out some crazy micro here. Whereas Arcvile, he currently, I believe, does have the upgrades finished up. Yeah, he's currently at 1-1 on these roaches. But oftentimes, Zerg vs. Zerg, while it's all about the drones, it's very much so a numbers game as well when it comes to the armies. And here we go. Now these bios are indeed dealing a significant amount of damage. Busker is actually looking like he may just simply be able to overwhelm his opponent. Look at the amount of stuff that he's got. These bios are not dodged whatsoever, and while Archvile is desperately fighting here, he is losing every single last of the roaches that was in this engagement. It looks like the player in blue is gonna try and immediately push up this ramp as well. These bios are awfully efficient because they are not being microed against, and while units are slowly trickling in, right, Busker is cleaning up every single one of these units. Now currently, he is getting to this point, what I see a lot when I coach this game as well. I see this point a lot where players start flooding a ton of resources. Busker, he will have to be on the top of his macro, because I think he's not injecting. I think he could potentially win the game right here, right now, but he's not injecting, so that could actually spell disaster, because there are, of course, still a lot of units spawning here as well for Archvile. His economy has really not been affected just yet, so as long as he manages to hold on here, he's gonna be in a decent position. A little bit of a cheeky bit of micro there. I'm not entirely sure what that achieved, but now he's gonna burrow them to keep them here for a little while longer. Zerglings are also gonna try and flood the map. Busker is smelling blood, decides to not reinforce with roaches and instead goes for Zerglings instead to try and close this game out right here, right now. But I do not think that this is going to be quite enough. Busker, he is indeed starting to flood a ton of resources here. He will be forced out of this base as well. And while he's trying to pull off some cute burrow micro, and apparently the Overseer is not quite paying attention to this just yet. There we go. He is not gonna be able to close out the game right here, right now. Can't help but wonder what this would have looked like if he would have injected. If he would have injected, it's the key component, you know, producing things with Zerg. Besides the drones, having the queen injects done. There we go. Now to start injecting a bunch, and I think he must have realized this mistake as well. Now, it is obviously true that it's rather tricky to, you know, keep up the macro while you're in the middle of a hectic situation and you're thinking you can close out the game. But at this point, since he really did not clean up any economy whatsoever, right? I guess he halted his base for a little while, but that's about it. At this point, the game is practically even. Neither player really pushing out a whole lot of drones here. I mean, it's 40 workers versus 39 right now, or 41 rather at this point for Archvile. Just slightly in his favor, and I actually would push this game right now in the favor of Archvile as well for the fact that he's got the 1-1 upgrades done. They're only just now getting started by Busker, and even though Busker had a good chance to close it out right there, he dropped the ball on the macro game. Roaches are now trying to push across the map here as well. I don't know if Archfall wants to get this aggressive. For the first time in his game, he did indeed obtain the supply lead here, but he gotta be careful, of course. You know, the defensive positioning in Zerg vs Zerg is a big one, because units just simply spawn so much closer to your existing army rather than the one that is attacking. So usually if you want to push in, it's rather tricky to actually close a game out like that as well. And actually Busker, it looks like he's going for the next step in his plan. He's going up to an infestation pit. Now this could mean a couple of things. He could go straight into a hive. He could go straight into Ultralisk with that, of course, which is very, very helpful. Or, oh no. What? No way! I see why this is a viewer submitted replay. No! I was gonna say, you can also go in for... You could go for Infestors with Bile. And of course, Fungal Growth with Corrosive Bile is extremely good. But here is the reason, I guess, why it made it to a viewer submitted replay cast. Because there are 9 Swarm hosts on the production tab, as well as a Nydus network. Now, Swarm hosts, of course, they deal an awful lot of damage. Usually the Nydus is not really going to be that great of an option on the Swarm hosts, because they are rather quick. In the latest balance notes, they did indeed nerf the movement speed of the Swarm host off of creep. So maybe this is something that will become more and more popular. But these units, they are extremely strong. They are very, very powerful. Now still, there's a menacing army here out on the map already. Archvile is at the very least posturing here to try and move across as well, although these Zerglings may keep him home here for a little while longer. At the same time though, for the player in red, we don't only see the oversaturation in the main base, but also that infestation pit and now the lurker den here too, which is a big deal. But I think these Zerglings are trying to get vision. I think they are trying to get vision. I think they may very well be here to spot for a Nydus Worm to go down. Although, there it is. I was going to say, I'm not seeing it just yet. This is actually looking an awful lot like a golf ball. I'm sorry, I just realized that. Is it just me? Anyway, the Nydus Worm rather right now goes down. Now, the player in red will quickly hear this. But he has no clue where this is. He does not know where this is and what is going on right now. He does not know that there are Swarm hosts outside of his natural expansion. And they're actually, this is not a bad position at all. They're going to be able to fly these Locusts over the... No, I don't know if you want to do that. I think you want to, like, fly the Locusts right over this, like, crevice over here. Fly him in! Go back into the night! Yo, dude. That is so cheeky, and these Locusts deal so much damage. These, oh my god, look at that damage. It's insane, right? The Locusts deal so much damage, and considering those units were completely unscouted, I mean, they ended up doing so much work. Now, Archvile, he's trying to figure out if there are still any units hiding here in the corner. He ends up losing his third base to a handful of... What? To a handful of Swarm hosts. Now, one thing to keep in mind about Swarm hosts, right, is that the supply counts right now are awfully deceiving. These things are very, very supply heavy, plus they don't really do very well in straight up engagements. You need to have something else with them, and this is a massive amount of Swarm hosts, right? Like, this is, how many is that? 18 Swarm hosts in total. That is not something you can really use in the middle of an engagement. So while the army supply counts may seem in favor right now of the blue player, I don't think he can actually really use a lot of these units in the fight. Well, he's gonna have to time these Locusts really well. I think his best scenario right now is to just try and pump out a lot of Roaches, though, because indeed, the player in red is trying to close out this game right now. He recognizes that his economy is in shambles. He knows that he needs to try and engage this one right now. Now, look at this. The Roaches are gonna be able to deal with this just fine. I think he wanted to micro back there, though, although apparently he's feeling confident. He wants to just simply engage all of those Locusts as well, and with reinforcing like units right now for the player in red, there's a good chance that he can indeed close out this game right here, right now. Very back and forth thus far, because Busker, while he's heavily ahead when it comes to the supply counts, he does not have enough to actually prevent this composition from really, you know, stopping the advancement into the third base. I mean, 33 Roaches are on the production tab. There's also a Ultralisk cavern coming in here, so I think that is going to be his next course of action. Roaches are now also scouted here, so he knows exactly what's going on. They're trying their very best to surround this. Locust, once again, off cooldown. He's going to be able to throw in those Swarm hosts, and once more, actually, he's going into the Nydus network, although I don't think there's a worm out anywhere. But I think as long as the player in red just simply backs up here for a second, I don't think you want to take the engagement. But if he backs up here for a second, waits for the Locust to time out, he's going to be able to clean up this army with relative with ease, and once again, Busker will be forced back into his own main base. Third base ended up falling. Main base is mined out. Natural just about to mine out as well, and the third is once again up and running right here for the player in red. He's gonna try and push up this ramp right now. He's gotta be careful though. That Nydus network is full of units. If he snipes that one down, a ton of these units will end up getting killed as well. The Swarm hosts are desperately trying to get on out of there. I don't know if every single one of them got out, but regardless, there are 11 remaining. Locusts are once again off cooldown. However, there are Ultralisks in a production tab. And these are Hydralisks. They are very flimsy units. Hydras can get shot down very easily, and so can roaches. I do not think that there is a chitinous plating upgrade at this point in the game, so they're not going to be super tanky. The Ultras, that is. But the Swarm hosts are surrounded right now. They will not live to fight another day, but the Ultralisks are out. The Ultras are out, and Busker, while he's heavily dropping in supply, I think he's going to be capable of pushing his opponent's army back here, at the very least, for the time being. And these Ultras, they are scary. Now, they don't have chitinous yet. Look at the amount of damage, right, that these Hydras and Roaches still deal to them. But they are going to be able to clean up these units if they do not get microed backwards. And that is exactly what is happening right now as well. Busker actually reinforcing with a ton of Zerglings here too. I think he may try and go for the counterattack, and I don't blame him. I think it's the correct option. I mean, there are a ton of vital drones here for the player in red. He's going to try and just simply hold on to this pressure. But what exactly is he going to do? I mean, the Ultralisks, they are on the march. Of course, though, there are lurkers. Ultralisks are armored. They're gonna take a lot of damage from this. But the question is, are they going to be out? Like, are they going to be out in time? And it doesn't look like that is going to be the case. One lonely spine crawler is being built here at the front. More lurkers and are also being morphed in at the top of that ramp. But I think that they will get scouted because that natural falls in just a matter of seconds. Swarm hosts, they ended up dealing a lot of damage. I don't know if they really dealt, you know, the damage that he was looking for, because he almost ended up losing the game nonetheless. But the Ultras, they deal so much work. They just simply cleaned up all of those Roaches and Hydralisk. And I guess that the engagement on top of those Locusts turned out to be a little bit too much, because eventually Busker, he still ends up obtaining the victory. What an awesome match. I guess the beginning was a little bit slow, but that was an awesome match. If you've got a great game yourself as well, go ahead and submit it to replays at LowkoTV. Just simply attach the .sc2 replay file to the email. And while you're at it, definitely also make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as future videos go live. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day, okay? Do not forget to smile. And I will see you in the next one.